Fine dog, I should say.
Speedy delivery to you, Mr. Rogers. Come along. You
Thanks for stopping by, Mr. McFeely. There goes Amos off like that. Boy. Puppies grow up to be dogs, and babies grow up to be men and women. Yeah. I'll clean up those things after a while. Did you see the way Queen Sarah was holding the baby? And the king was patting the baby. Sleep, little baby, sleep. I will be near you. You will be safe to sleep. Sleep, little baby, sleep. Sleep, little baby, sleep. I will be near you. You will be safe to sleep. Sleep, little baby, sleep. Anybody sing to you? Remember anybody singing a lullaby to you? I like to sing to you. Sure. And I like to sing with you, too. Lots of things you and I do together. We'll do more things together. We'll sing more songs together tomorrow. Tomorrow. We'll start the day tomorrow with the song. Or two. 1, 2. Tomorrow, tomorrow. We'll start the day tomorrow with a smile for you. Till then, I hope you're feeling happy. Till then, I hope your day is snappy. Tomorrow, tomorrow, it soon will be tomorrow and be our day. We will say a very happy tomorrow to you. You always make each day such a special day for me. You know how, don't you? By just your being you, yourself. There's only one person in the whole world like you. And I like you just the way you are. Try. Try with a bag, okay? A paper bag. And just see the kinds of things that will fit in a bag. Not words, not songs, not feelings. No, just things. And why don't you try drawing a song, too? Sure. Each one would be different because each person's different. It's what makes you so special. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is made possible by grants from the Sears Roebuck Foundation and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Get ready for 321 Contact. It's next.
Next on Wonderworks, The Boy Who Loved Trolls.
All those bridges. Wow. There must be a troll under one of them. Troll!
I can't believe the things people say about me.
What do you mean?
I'm a troll.
At a special time, Saturday at 7.
In the premiere episode of The Living Planet, journey with host David Attenborough as he reveals some fascinating evidence concerning the Earth's origin. While viewing the rich extremes in nature, you'll learn what forces separated the 7 continents and why the Himalayas now house the remains of sea creatures in the building of the Earth, next time on The Living Planet.
The series encores, Sunday night at 7.
Major funding for this afternoon's programming is provided by the Helena Rubinstein Foundation, a longtime supporter of outstanding children's television.
What is the force that makes you stop? What is the force that slows you down? Friction. You need friction. Without friction, you just slip and slide. Friction. You need friction. Two things rub together and make friction. It is the force that slows you down. It is the force that makes you stop.
It's got blades, like an ice skate, and a sail, like a sailboat. And it skims along on top of the ice, pushed by the wind. This is an ice boat. That's Miguel out there, learning how to sail. He's with Henry Bassett, a world champion ice boater. To go fast, an ice boat has to avoid friction with the surface of the ice. Miguel's going to find out how it does that. That's Carl Young, an engineer who specializes in sled design. He knows a lot about friction.
Now you're gonna have to do the brake. Let me get in here. Let me take this. Get ready with the brake. Ease. Okay, start pulling it real hard, real hard. There we go. Real hard. There you go. You got it. That's super.
All right. That was great. Hey, that was great, guys. Wonderful.
Starting to like it, huh?
Oh, man, how fast are we going?
I figure we're going about 30, maybe 35 miles an hour.
I felt like we were flying.
Yeah, looked it.
Well, how fast does an ice boat go?
Oh, radar's been used to time it at over 100 miles an hour.
100 miles an hour. Amazing. You know, how come when this is water
and there's a boat in the water, you got the same amount of wind, but it doesn't go as fast as the ice boat.
Well, that's friction. Whenever you have something rubbing against each other, you're going to create friction. And in the water, you have so much water to displace compared to this ice boat. You only have 3 small points of contact.
The boat is pushing against more of the water than the ice boat would be?
That's right. Only 3 little lines of contact on ice.
And that's why it goes so fast.
Much faster. There's very little friction between the ice boat and ice.
What do you mean by friction, though?
Well, friction is a resistance to movement. When you have 2 surfaces rubbing against each other, no matter how smooth it is, you have a resistance to movement because of the bumps on the surfaces. And that resistance to movement is friction.
No matter how smooth they are, you're always going to have that little resistance, right?
That's right.
And that's friction?
That's friction.
You know, if we take a look at the runners over here, you notice we've got a 500-pound boat, but we're only trying to drag these 3 little runners across the ice. So they contact so little that we've got very little friction. Why don't we take a look? We'll show you why we've got so little friction with this. We use many different kinds of runners in different conditions, but we're always trying to do one thing. What we're trying to do all the time is to actually melt the ice, and we do that with the weight of the runner and the speed of the boat. The speed of the runner sliding across the ice creates friction, which creates heat, which melts the ice, turns it to water, and then we're sliding the runner on water instead of ice, and so that's when we go the fastest.
So the friction creates heat, right? Like when I rub my hands together,
Exactly.
I warm them up. And the heat melts the ice. So you're not actually sliding on the ice, you're sliding on a thin layer of water.
If we were sliding on the ice, we wouldn't go as fast. It's much quicker than actually trying to just drag the runner across the ice itself. There's less friction involved when we're riding on the water.
Now, when you said pressure, the pressure is created by the people inside the boat and the weight of the boat itself, right?
Right.
And you're also talking about the friction that's created by the steel blade rubbing against the ice as it slides along.
Yes, because, again, there's pressure between the thin surface of the runner here and the ice, create the water, which we then ride on and go very fast on.
Well, what about today? The ice was kind of mushy. I mean, I actually saw the blade digging into the ice. Now, did that create more friction?
Right, much more. You know, we couldn't go nearly as fast today as we would go on hard ice because the runner was digging in, as you mentioned, throwing a lot of ice away. And so instead of sitting on top and riding on a nice little thin layer of water, we're digging into the ice and having to create a path through the ice, and it's much more friction.
So I guess it just depends on the conditions, right?
The condition and the material of the runner blades, like many other sports that work on ice, like ice skating, hockey, luge, or bobsled, if you're running on ice, if the ice is very soft, the runner blades have a tendency to sink into the ice, thus creating more wetted surface area, and you'll slow down. So we are always looking for harder ice to go faster.
Always.
Yes.
And the harder the ice, the less friction you have. That's right. Why don't we do some more sailing?
I'd love to.
Okay.
Sure.
When 2 surfaces rub together, they tend to stick. This resistance to movement is called friction. It happens because most surfaces are irregular or bumpy. If you look through a microscope, you'd see that even very smooth-looking surfaces, like ice, are actually pretty bumpy. And these bumps catch on each other. When an ice boat moves, friction between the blade and the ice causes heat. This heat and the pressure of the weight of the boat melts some of the ice under the blade. And this makes a thin layer of water between the blade and the ice. So the boat is actually sliding along on a film of water. Sometimes something you do when you're a kid can change the whole way you look at things.
You could see these boys almost strutting their stuff and very relaxed in #1 position. Now their image is #2 or #3. Things are changing. The pecking order's really being redefined. And of course, the Australia 4 syndicate, their confidence must be renewed. They must get tougher. So it'll be most interesting to see how this whole series pans out over the next few days.
But there is one man who has doubts about Australia.
The Australians, they don't stand a chance.
The fight for the America's Cup has gone down under in more ways than...
Competition. They make the race for the... 4 months ago would have taken you to the blue waters off Waikiki and the unfashionable suburbs above Pearl Harbor with Diamond Head in the distance. Like a submarine sneaking across the Pacific, Stars and Stripes was secure from piercing Aussie eyes in Honolulu. And the conditions there most closely resembled those off Fremantle. Down 2 races to none. Forget about French Kiss. Everybody expected the Kiwis would win that series easily, but Blackhaller against Connor, now that's a different story. Talked to a couple of the crew at USA, and while nobody's giving up the ship, nobody's going out and giving a let's win one for the Gippers speech either.
Well, Jim, I think Tom needs a whole new attitude out there today. He's been laying back at the starts, going for different ends of the line. He's got to get on top of Connor, get very aggressive, cover closely, and never let him up. That's why he won 2 races in the trials, and that's what he needs to do today.
USA won the start by 1 second, but that was about all she wrote. Stars and Stripes smoking at 18 to 20 knot winds, leading by 40 seconds early on, and then starting to stretch things out and was never seriously challenged by the boys on USA. Gary, that must be a very frustrating feeling now, faced with a 3-zip deficit.
As starboard tailor Hank Stewart adjusts the jib, this crew is not about to give up. At times, USA matches the speed of Stars and Stripes, but every now and then, Stars and Stripes seems to get a burst of speed and takes a boat length out of USA. It is very frustrating for Tom Blackhaller and his crew.
Speaking of crew work, Gary, you felt all along that that was the one weak link aboard USA, but what about aboard Stars and Stripes?
This rivalry is so competitive that both crews are getting better and better. Stars and Stripes has an absolutely perfect spinnaker set. Nice going.
Dennis Connor's crew with some classic seamanship. Aboard USA, however, it's a different story. After losing the first race by 10 seconds and leading almost all the way, then a 3-minute loss yesterday despite leading by 18 seconds early on, today's 2-minute and 23-second loss just might take the wind out of Tom Blackhaller's sails. Down 3 races to none, and now USA needs the next 4 in a row. And as Dennis Connor says, see you later, Tommy. In the race of the day, French Kiss and Kiwi Magic, the Plastic Fantastics proved to be human after all. New Zealand led through the first 2 legs, then trailed the Flying Frenchman by 24 seconds.
Jim, this is sailing at its absolute best. These boats are traveling at 14 knots, surfing down waves of 6 feet. It's neck and neck.
At that 5th mark, it's still French Kiss in front by 24 seconds.
I think Chris Dixon on New Zealand is struggling to regain his composure. He's not used to being behind like this. And look at the size of these waves. It's tough going out here on gauge roads.
6 to 8 foot swells out amidst the Indian Ocean. New Zealand has won 5 in a row against French Kiss. They've won 25 in a row overall, the Kiwis have, and they're not used to coming from behind.
One of the big differences on French Kiss is the designer, Philippe Briand, who I believe is one of the best in the world, cut her stern off and was able to put more ballast in the hull of the boat, so she's much better in a breeze, and that's the difference today.
French Kiss still in front as they approach that 6th mark, but the margin is sliced down to 19 seconds.
Chris Dixon is catching up. Look at this mainsail. It's having trouble filling the breeze, and that's because it's made for lighter winds. Chris Dixon made a wrong selection on that sail today.
Gary, the Kiwis have chopped 5 more precious seconds off the Flying Frenchman's lead with 2 legs to go, and what would be the upset of the semifinals so far. French Kiss still in front as they round that 6th mark.
New Zealand has a good record of coming from behind and taking a race. 300 yards from the finish. New Zealand, the leeward boat, has the right to luff, altering course toward the wind. She luffs up. French Kiss responds. There's a collision. The 2 boats have hit. French Kiss is obligated to stay clear, and she doesn't. She'll be disqualified and will lose the race because of this incident. Another win for New Zealand.
So the Kiwis come from behind with a 13-second victory, their 26th victory in a row. They've won 36 of 37 overall. Last to beat them, Dennis Connor way back in mid-October. They're heading for a Challenger final showdown. So the scores after today, 3-love Chris Dixon, 3-love Dennis Connor, the youngest against the best. It began back in June of '84 as an 11th hour challenge. Now the Kiwis are just one win away from the Challenger Finals. Quite a first-time effort for a nation of only 3 million people. Heads back home after 3 dramatic days of racing for a well-deserved New Year's rest. All the attention and the eyes shift to Stars and Stripes. The Sail America 12 really has done it all, and Dennis Conner leading arch-rival Tom Blackaller 3 races to none, just 1 race away now from driving the final nail into USA's coffin.
Jim, the big difference today was boat speed. Stars and Stripes was simply too fast for Tom Blackaller in USA, and when the wind's up at 26 knots, USA is going to have to work very hard to catch up.
Speaking of working very hard, how about being down 3 races to none? That's the plight of the Flying Frenchman. Mark Pajot, a costly error today against Kiwi Magic.
Well, the one bright spot for the French is they proved that they are fast enough to go head-to-head with the Kiwis, but it was a major tactical blunder, and it cost them the race.
How about French Kiss, though? Being so competitive against the Kiwis, that's a good sign for Dennis Conner or whoever would challenge.
Well, I think there's hope here that America can defeat the Kiwis. They almost lost the race today, but more importantly, Dennis Conner is faster than French Kiss, and the French Kiss was just as fast as the Kiwis, so there's hope.
So the Challenger Finals, which you'll see live right here on ESPN, shaping up as a big battle between the youngest skipper in the Cup competition, 25-year-old Chris Dixon and Kiwi Magic, but they've got 26 straight wins, against Dennis Conner in Stars and Stripes, the man motivated by revenge. For Gary Jobson, I'm Jim Kelly. We'll see you next time. The America's Cup Challenge Down Under has been brought to you by Hilton, America's business address. By the companies of Bell Atlantic, we believe that the genius of...
cannot afford a screw-up. We can afford 5 more days. We can't afford a screw-up.
Burt Lancaster narrates an exclusive profile of one American team locked into the Sail Wars.
Major funding for NOVA is provided by this and other public television stations, which depend largely on viewer contributions for their support. Additional funding was provided by the Johnson & Johnson family of companies, supplying healthcare products worldwide. And by Allied Signal, a technology leader in aerospace, electronics, automotive products, and engineered materials.
Wind it up, please!
And as I speak to you, 2 12-meter yachts are rapidly approaching that line, and the one that is in front, the one that is closest to the finish line, bears the sail numbers KA6. They are, of course, the sails and the numbers of Australia 2, and they appear to have a comfortable lead at this late stage.
In the most widely followed series of sailboat races of all time, a sleek white yacht from Western Australia rode the fickle winds off Newport, Rhode Island, to a place in history.
It's going to be Australia 2. They are going to win it. Stand up, Australia. Stand up, Australia. And give these boys a cheer. We are looking for the smoke at any moment. They're about to do it. They're about to cross the line. They make a final move.
thus ended the longest winning streak in sports history. After 24 successful defenses spanning 132 years, an American yacht had lost. No one on the losing boat will ever forget that September afternoon. John Marshall.
Going on to the last spinnaker run, and we had opened up a 40 or 50 second lead on the previous upwind leg, and we turned the mark and set the spinnaker. We knew that the Australians were going to be faster on the next leg. The feeling of not being able to do very much to prevent them passing is really a sickening kind of feeling in a sailboat race. The boat was deathly silent. There wasn't really anything to say. They had a better boat. They had a better boat because they decided that they would rest the entire program on a major step forward in technology. And the pervasive sense in America was that technology was a barren field, that there wasn't any important gain to be made, that 12 meters had already been optimized, and that the differences from one to the next would be very, very small.
Australia 2's wing to keel revolutionized 12-meter sailboat design. It was a breakthrough that would have been impossible without the application of cutting-edge science. Australia's high-tech victory elevated the contest to much more than just a sailboat race.
The Australian team had created something, an intellectual product, that was a brilliant step forward from what we had conceived could be done. And that's a very, very strong statement about where American technology had gotten to, and it was not a very good place. So we picked that up and said, okay, we've been challenged at a different level. We're going to have to look to our imaginations, conceive of some new ideas, really go to the excitement of a mental quest here.
Six American syndicates took up that challenge, all of them determined to reassert America's technological strength. Each has spent between $5 and $15 million designing and building their own high-tech boats. In October 1986, they gathered in Fremantle, Western Australia, along with the best from the rest of the world. For the next 4 months, they'll slug it out to determine which boat will challenge the Australians in the Cup Finals in February 1987. Only by surviving this grueling elimination series and then defeating the Australians can an American team make good on its promise to bring the Cup back home. Dennis Conner, the losing American skipper in 1983, is one of the top-rated American challengers with his new team called Sail America. This is the story of Sail America's 3-year effort to design a yacht capable of recapturing sailing's greatest trophy. It's a behind-the-scenes look at a major 12-meter campaign, one that takes us to the highest levels of international sport and to the frontiers of science. In early 1984, John Marshall was named coordinator of the Sail America design team. His job was to organize and manage an American design effort that would be technologically second to none.
Just very rough intuitively, it would look like. We decided that what we would have to do is put together a multidisciplinary team. People from specifically the sailing environment, professionals in that area, are 3 yacht designers, but also people whose expertise was much broader. Theoreticians from a university background, practicing aeronautical engineers, people involved with military development, people from the ship hydrodynamics background, so that what we would have would be the best in the country in a wide range of skills that all could be brought to bear on this particular problem.
People think about it like, hey, we've had sailing ships for centuries. How come it isn't all worked out? And it isn't all worked out because it is such a difficult problem. We have to solve the aerospace problem of the forces on the sails. We have to solve the wave problem of this boat that's operating in the interface. And we still have to solve the frictional problem of the water against the hull. all of those problems are present at the same time. And it's by far the most difficult problem that I've seen in terms of ship hydrodynamics.
The yachts used in the America's Cup are 12 meters, a number that refers not to length, but to an arcane formula called the International 12-meter rule. Key measurements, length, girth difference, freeboard, and sail area, are all variables in an equation the solution of which must equal 12 meters. This produces a boat about 65 feet long and weighing up to 60,000 pounds.
It's pretty hard to get away from the influence of the rule, and within the influence of the rule, come up with something that's really significantly better than any other design. When you're trying to refine something to the upper limit, the difference between a very good boat and an extremely good boat is a pretty small margin. If someone just guesses in the wrong direction, it's pretty easy to have something that's bad. And the degrees of relative badness are much broader than the degrees of relative goodness.
The definition of an interesting game very often is that the rules are sufficiently restrictive to keep the players together and face-to-face, and they're sufficiently free to allow some real creativity in the moves that you make. And the 12-meter rule looks deceptively simple, and the game appears deceptively small and constrained. And then you get bursts of extreme creativity when some whole new approach comes into it that no one has thought of. And the elegance of the game reveals itself, and the challenge reveals itself, and then you understand why very, very bright and very creative people get so heavily involved. Really, there's nothing there. Ultimately, it's no more important than winning a game of chess, but the game is nicely balanced.
Sail America's strategy was to have 2 new boats in the water before the end of 1985. Then, if there was enough money and the need, a 3rd boat could be built in 1986. This schedule gave the team 18 months to come up with a winning design. When they started in 1984, this felt like more than enough time.
You start the design process by trying to figure out what it is the boat has to do. In the case of a 12-meter, it's got to sail match races. So it's a one-on-one weapon, strictly. You've got to be able to pounce on any weakness or any error by the enemy. You've got to be able to control the enemy. It's very, very one-on-one kind of competition. It's confrontational, it's aggressive, and the boat has to be that way.
The ideal 12 would be fast, upwind and down. It would be very maneuverable, yet stable. And perhaps most importantly, it would be all of these in a wide range of wind and sea conditions. Unfortunately, due to the 12-meter rule and basic sailboat physics, it's extremely difficult to improve in one area without losing ground in another. For example, following the 12-meter rule, if you want more boat length, you must give up sail area. Long boats are potentially faster, and in heavy winds, you can afford to give up a certain amount of sail area or power. But in light winds, you're in big trouble without those extra square feet of sails. Simply put, a Racing 12 can't be a boat for all seasons or locales. Australia, too, was the best boat for Newport in 1983. She would not be the best boat for Fremantle in 1987.
If the boat doesn't fit the weather conditions, if you end up with a boat that's a real good light weather boat and it blows 20 knots every day, or a real heavy weather bomber that's powerful and big and stiff and just great in a breeze, and then you get 2 consecutive weeks of light or medium weather, you're just plain going to lose. No hope. It's all over.
So the number one priority was to identify the wind conditions and sea conditions that we expect to race in, and then work on the parameters of the boat for those conditions.
We're probably about right here.
Meteorologist Lee Davis tackled the critical job of assessing sailing conditions in the Indian Ocean off Fremantle.
I would say it's due west.
In January 1984, he made the first of a series of trips to Australia to gather weather information. With his new data and 10 years of historical records from the Fremantle Port Authority, Davis produced an hour-by-hour, day-by-day picture of conditions on the racecourse.
Here we have a plot of the wind speeds and wind directions for a particular day. And we can see at 10 o'clock in the morning, the winds are quite light. They're from the shore, and they increase to 20 knots during the day, and by evening they decrease to 0. And you can see another day, same type of conditions, winds this time will increase up to 30 knots, quite heavy day. And that pattern continues on going until we have another day which is completely different. The sea breeze comes in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but this time it only increases to 10 to 12 knots. That makes a real difficult decision. Do you build a boat that's going to sail fast in 30 knots of breeze? Or do you build a boat that's going to sail well in 10 knots? Or do you build a boat somewhere in between?
Sailors think of wind and sea conditions in 5 broad categories, ranging from light to heavy. Davis was able to give Sail America the percentage of time they would encounter each type of condition. From this, it was possible to determine what length boat would be best for any given month. Unfortunately, what would be best for the November preliminaries would not be best for the Cup finals in February.
You know, there are 14 different smart groups here, I think, trying to figure this out, and they're going to come to different answers. One of them is going to have the best answer. The people that are close and have versatile boats will probably be okay, and then there'll be some others that are out on the fringes that just plain will lose before they start.
Sail America decided to design a longboat, one that would be optimal for the heavier conditions expected in the critical December and January trials. Plugging that length into the 12-meter rule gave them the boat's sail area and weight. With these basic parameters set, the designers started searching for a hull and keel combination that would be both maneuverable and fast. A fast hull shape is one that produces the least hydrodynamic resistance.
The opportunity and the problem in 12-meter design is to find an optimum distribution of volume, or in other words, to shape the underwater body and volume of the boat in an optimal way such that its resistance is minimum. You are basically given a balloon whose volume must be kept constant, and you can squeeze that balloon as you wish within a certain length to find a shape and form which will minimize the resistance of the boat.
Are they going to test this at all?
Well, it'll probably...
Every time the designers squeezed their 12-meter balloon into a new shape, mathematical assessments of the likely resistance of that shape were calculated using computer modeling techniques borrowed from the aerospace industry. Much of this work was done by Charles Boat, Bruce Rosen, and Joe Leoza from the Grumman Corporation. Basically, they used a computer program developed for NASA to break down hull and keel shapes into thousands of discrete flat panels. The computer then solved hydrodynamic flow equations for each. The millions of calculations required were done at Cray Research in Minneapolis on one of their supercomputers. In this way, Sail America was able to test both subtle hull and keel modifications and radical new concepts. By late summer 1985, Sail America's first new boat was almost ready to hit the water. Reflecting Davis's heavy weather prediction, Stars and Stripes 85 was long, nearly 3 feet longer than a traditional 12. In terms of design, she was less a breakthrough than an evolutionary step forward from Australia 2. Like Australia 2, Stars and Stripes 85 had a winged keel, The advantages of this design had been confirmed early in the team's research. Sailboat keels have two basic functions. They provide stability by getting more weight down low, and perhaps even more importantly, they produce lift. Lift is the force that counteracts a boat's tendency to be blown sideways by the wind. Winged keels do both especially well. Because they are upside down compared to traditional keels, they have more weight down low. This means increased stability. Their hydrodynamic shape, short and thin at the top, long and fat at the bottom, provides greater lift. But there's a price. The long bottom edge creates drag. Adding wings redirects the flow of water around the keel, reducing this drag. Anxious to find out just how good Stars and Stripes 85 was, Sail America began full-scale boat testing in Honolulu, Hawaii, using two vintage 83 yachts as trial horses. It was now October. The races in Australia were going to begin in less than a year. Boat test manager, Robert Hopkins.
We have 22 guys on the water sailing the boats side by side, just a couple boat lengths apart all day. And directly behind them, this boat here, the Betsy, our tender, follows. And it's collecting a stream of data off of each boat, which comes by telemetry radio. All of that is fed into this Microvax 2 digital computer here, which is a very small but very powerful computer, which handles all this stuff, munches the data, and gives us a summary report right after the test is completed, which tells us who won and by how much and how fast they were going, the stuff we need to know. Also, we can analyze each of these summary reports to see how we're doing in the broad picture, like how fast was one of our boats against another, how fast was it during the month of January with a particular keel on it compared to the month of February with another.
To everyone's relief, Stars and Stripes 85 was fast. And skipper Dennis Conner quickly developed a fondness for this long boat, which his crew called the cruise liner. Yet the designers remained unsatisfied. There was nothing revolutionary about Stars and Stripes 85, and no reason to believe the competition couldn't do as well. The desire to do better, in all likelihood the need to do better, kept the team searching.
And we saw some wild ideas. We saw twin keels side by side like that. We saw twin keels reversed, you know, at the ends, bow and stern of the boat. We saw a very varied array of bulbs with fins, hydroelastic control and fins on the back. We saw different hull volume distributions, some of which were extremely radical. We weren't even sure how you could shape a hull like that and make it work. We saw annular keels, which are ring keels. Saw a lot of different ideas.
That the Australian victory in 1983 was based on a technological breakthrough was something the Sail America design team couldn't forget.
Technology item for 87 in the same sense that winglets were technology item in 83.
More than once, the designers argued about how radical a boat to build. Some were convinced that without a major breakthrough, the team would lose.
Right. You believe yours and I believe mine, but that...
There are a number of us on the team who are very much interested in finding that quantum leap in performance, finding an idea in terms of a hull keel concept that far exceeds the type of technology that sailed in 1983. And of course, this is higher risk technology, but we think we're onto something now that might give us that.
I christen thee Stars and Stripes.
The something they were onto was a radical bow design, which was incorporated into the team's second U-boat, Stars and Stripes 86. The new bow shape, details of which remain a Sail America secret, was supposed to minimize the creation of waves. If it worked, this would decrease resistance and make the boat much faster. To confuse spies from other teams, she was painted to look exactly like Stars and Stripes 85. In many ways, Stars and Stripes 86 was a full-scale experiment. the initial results of which came in just as the full design team was meeting in January of 1986. Needless to say, the first order of business was a report on her performance.
Okay, so we have 4 days of difficult-to-use results, and 1 day, which was yesterday, of finally we got some trade wins. The result is that 86 is getting beaten by 85 by about, I would say, 20 seconds a mile in 5 knots, 10 to 15 seconds a mile in 10 knots.
Clearly, Stars and Stripes 86 was not all the designers had hoped for.
5 to 10 seconds a mile.
Still, John Marshall argued that she was a valuable learning experience, although an expensive one.
I think what we're seeing right now is that the boat is maybe very slightly disappointing. So 86 is a boat that may never sail a sailboat race for keeps, but she's not catastrophically bad. What is interesting is that the very radical treatment of the forward part of the boat as an isolated element is not a serious deficit in performance.
For the design team, the news about Stars and Stripes 86 was sobering. After 18 months of research and the construction of 2 brand new 12 meters, the pressure to come up with a winner was still there. 85 was fast, but very conventional. She broke no new ground, and other syndicates could be expected to do as well. 86 was a noble experiment that would never race.
I think we're sure not going to win the America's Cup with one of the boats that's in the water right now. I think we're pretty darn sure of that. So.
The first America's Cup trials were now just 8 months away. In that time, Sail America would have to design, build, test, and deliver to Australia a third and better boat.
Sail Wars will continue. If you like Nova, think how much more we could do with your help. Please call and pledge right now.
A short fundraising break from us and a strong responsive support from you is the key to the success of our experiment. In 2 minutes, we return to Nova Sail Wars, and that is time enough to make the decision to finally join 13 as a member. Here's Roger Rathburn with the details.
Every March, 13 says this drive is our biggest and most important on-air pledge drive of the year. It's true. But this March, for the first time, we can say this drive is our only on-air pledge drive of the year. It's also true. In August and December, instead of a big drive, we had brief 1-minute reminders to you to mail in a check. Our experiment of canceling 2 out of 3 of our drives is one we want to continue. This drive will be over before you realize it. They really don't last forever. Please take a minute, call the number on your screen, and join us for the first time with a pledge of $40. Every month you'll receive Dial magazine, and you'll see the listing of all our shows, and be able to check out if it will have a second showing. Your 13 membership card will surprise you as a useful ticket to the arts in more ways than one, and will welcome you with a navy blue nylon 13 tote bag. If you've held back because you're really not fond of these pledge breaks, then this minute is for your call. We want to make this March the only drive of the year. We can cancel a drive, but we cannot cancel our need for your support. Please make your pledge now.
1-800-544-1300 is the number to call to assure you get signed on board for 13. The break is over, but the need for you to call remains if you are not a member. Make the experiment work and join 13. Thank you.
Thank you for your financial support of public television. And now, part 2 of Nova's Sail Wars.
This is the tank at Offshore Technology Corporation in Escondido, California, where Sail America tests scale models of promising hull and keel designs. This is their 31st model, in all likelihood the last hull shape to be tested.
You sure the dog got in here? I'm positive the dog got in here.
Time is short. Plans for a final boat must be delivered to the builder soon. Ever since Australia 2 won with her new and secret keel, Security has been a major issue for 12-meter syndicates. OTC personnel and Nova's film crew are sworn to secrecy about test results. Concerned that these images might aid the competition, Sail America insisted that certain critical design features be blacked out. Model 31, like the others built for the team, is 1/3 scale and weighs 2,000 pounds. This is widely considered the smallest model that can produce a reliable picture of the hydrodynamic resistance of the full-scale boat. And measuring resistance is what the towing tank is all about. Mounted on the model is a dynamometer, which electronically measures the effort it takes to push the boat through the water. The dynamometer is connected to a computer, which uses this data to calculate the total drag produced by the boat. The lower the drag, the faster the boat. With time to build only one more boat, Sail America focused its efforts on reducing wave-making resistance, 50% of the total resistance on any boat.
Boats, as they go through the water, because they're heavy, they displace the water and they push it out of the way and they make waves. And as the boat tries to go faster and faster, the wave gets bigger and more energy is burned up in pushing this wave out of the way.
The 12-meter, being a relatively heavy yacht, has to push a lot of water out of the way as it goes through the water. And the way that the volume of the hull is distributed from bow to stern influences the way in which the water is parted at the bow and the way it comes together again at the stern.
If the boat can, in one way or another, produce an easier waveform or a more spread out waveform, the boat will go, instead of 9.5 knots, it'll go 9.6 or 9.7. The easy way, of course, is to make the boat much lighter, like a catamaran, because a lighter boat makes much smaller waves. But unfortunately, catch-22, the 12-meter rule gives you a minimum weight for each length. You can't make it lighter, or you pay a huge penalty. And the penalty is far more than you could possibly make up for in extra speed. So the easy way out is precluded, and all of the subtleties go into making this rather heavy mass go through the water. It's not an elegant sort of a problem in a way, because why would you want to have a heavy mass go through the water? But that's the problem that's set in front of you, and you keep pushing that rock up the hill.
So how will Model 31 get the rock up the hill? Designer Britain Chance.
At a simplistic level, one thing that we're interested in doing is making the waves produced by the hull, by the bow and stern of the hull, as far apart as possible. And one method of doing that is to put more volume forward near the bow end of the boat and more volume aft. And what that does is it causes that volume which you have moved forward to spread the waves further apart, and that allows the boat to have a higher top speed.
Determining how much volume to move forward and aft is all done on computers.
We try to mathematically describe little bits of volume, and you just keep redistributing these little bits of volume until you find the point at which the resistance is actually minimized. And this is all done by a mathematical concept through an optimization procedure that can only be done on a computer. Now this, because it's a mathematical concept, may or may not be producible as a yacht. So I have to take my result, pass it on to the yacht designer, and he has to tell me whether he can do this or not.
This approach had led the team to the radical bow design for Stars and Stripes 86. It had also guided the development of Model 31.
There's a great deal at stake on this model. This probably will be our last model test, and the one on which we will base our final boat. We have about a month before we must actually commit to the construction of the boat, and people are understandably reluctant to proceed with the building of a boat unless it has been tested.
A full test series includes 80 or more trips down the tank. Each time the model is run at a different speed or angle. After 10 or so runs, there is enough data to establish a meaningful trend. This is a tense time.
10.71, 10.28 knots.
Unfortunately, for Model 31, the numbers weren't good. Though the redesigned bow showed potential for reduced wave-making resistance, the stern, which was unchanged from previous models, was now separating, increasing total drag. Further evidence of how delicate a balance a good design really is. Separation is what happens when the flow of water around a hull can't stay in relatively smooth lines. The flow literally separates from the hull surface at the stern, exploding into turbulent eddies, all of which represent lost energy. This is what happened with Model 31.
No, I'm disappointed in that I didn't expect this problem to crop up because, as I mentioned, we attempted to keep this area as a control, truly a control. But as I mentioned, there's a very, well, difficult to model and, in fact, unmodelable interaction between wave drag and form drag at this point as far as analysis goes. And it blew up. It's a risk you run when you try to change too many things at once. And we changed a lot of things in this model.
It's a terrible feeling. It's a really terrible feeling when all of your expectations are so high, and they just come crashing down about you, and you look at the results and you know it's not an experimental error. It's a real problem with the hull form. In that case, it was obviously separating. We knew it was separating. We knew that was unacceptable, and you sort of have the feeling that you shouldn't have let it happen, that it was basically a screw-up that shouldn't have occurred. And that was one of the reasons why I was so adamant about going on and fixing it, because I was certain we could fix it.
Now, we've lost a week in our schedule because the last model didn't test as well. I can go one more week, but I want to see something that these guys feel, so we have a consensus, or a majority at least, from a naval architectural point of view, gives us the least chance for a screw-up. We cannot afford a screw-up. We can afford 5 more days. We can't afford a screw-up.
The area that I thought was causing the problem, separation-wise, was primarily through here. You could physically see it when the boat was heeled.
Depending on what we have for inside ballast, we can ooch the keel a little bit further.
Yeah.
Page comparisons.
Yeah.
We've got something that looks very promising for a final boat. The concept work looks sound. The analytic predictions look very good. And out of the tank test data, which needs a lot more work, a lot more refining and sorting through to find what we're looking for in it, there's a thread of something that looks very, very good. And overlaying that, without any doubt, there's a defect, a killer defect. The boat, as it stands right now, couldn't win. But someplace in there is the essence of a boat that could be a great winner. And I think the task now, what the guys have to do, is see whether they can save the essential brilliance in the design and not throw it out, and at the same time eliminate this flow separation that's obviously taking place and is adding drag that's just plain unacceptable. And we don't have very much more time to do that in. We've got probably a couple of weeks maximum of analysis to solve the problem. We've got to test it because we wouldn't conceivably build a boat, which implies committing an additional $600,000 probably, unless we know that we've made some progress from here at cleaning this design up. It's a tough problem, and we're down to the last available few weeks in order to meet a timeline and have the boat adequately prepared and tuned and race ready when we have to race. It's a nice problem.
After an hour of testing, a pattern emerged. It was not what anyone had hoped to see.
Then if the data is accurate, it means that the changes made from model 31 and 32 were somehow in the wrong direction.
Well, I guess there are times when you wonder how much is science and how much is art. And I guess I can live with the idea that there's still an awful lot of art involved. What's scary is the fact that it might just be plain dumb luck.
Nights like this one are tough on designers and technicians. At this point, they can only hope it's a flaw in the tests and not in their design. In one form or another, designers of tank-tested yachts for over 50 years. Acceptance of this technology, however, has never been universal, and it was almost completely discredited in the 1970s, following a disaster called Mariner.
Trim the main. Get the main in.
In 1974, Britain Chance relied on tank testing to design a 12-meter for Ted Turner.
Trim in. We're going to be right about on. Trim in. Damn it. Trim in. Damn it. Trim. Trim the main.
Mariner was a radical departure from tradition. Her tank test predicted greatness.
If you're right about that stern, haven't designers been wrong for the last 100 years?
Well, we'll find out, won't we?
What the world found out was that Mariner was a dog. Her failure soured the American design community on high technology for almost 10 years.
The failure was certainly mine. I was responsible for it. But it was based on predictions of very small-scale models. The models commonly used at this time were 1 to 13 scale. We now use 1 to 3 scale. And the scale effects, particularly the effects of friction and probably their interaction with wave making, gave a misleading result. The boat did not perform full size as she performed in the tank. This was a very unfortunate result for a number of reasons, one of which was that it stopped the general use of tank testing for quite some time, and also caused a disinterest in the general application of technology. One of the outcomes from the narrow perspective of the America's Cup, I think, was very probably the loss of the America's Cup in 1983.
Australia 2's breakthrough winged keel was the result of exhaustive tank testing. In her wake, doubts about the value of the tank have largely evaporated.
This point's very troublesome.
On this February night, however, Sail America's designers stubbornly refused to accept the test results. Despite the numbers, they continued to believe in their design. It took most of the night, but in the end, their faith was vindicated.
It is filtered, so that accounts for it.
What does?
The fact that there was a filter in the data channel, which is
An electronic filter used in an earlier test of an oil platform had been inadvertently left in the computer. This had skewed all of the night's results.
It should be. Well, what do we do? Come on, let's see what we got.
The corrected numbers were even better than original projections. They had solved the separation problem. They believed the killer defect was no more.
NOVA will continue after you take the opportunity to make your pledge. Help us bring you more programs like Sail Wars. Please call now.
A final 2-minute intermission in this special NOVA Sail Wars. Other stations around the country are taking advantage of this intermission for a full 8 to 10 minutes. We'd like our experiment to get the largest response we can from you in the shortest possible time. This is the phone number to call. Tell the operator you want to make a pledge to 13. It's that easy. You choose the amount you want to pledge. You can choose to pledge $50 and receive this thank you.
The world of nature, its flora, its fauna, its geological wonders on all 7 continents. From Africa, the egg-eating snake. From Europe, the dragonfly. From North America, the wild stallions of the Great Plains. From South America, the tiger salamander. From Asia, the axis deer. From Australia, the wide-mouthed trout. From Antarctica, the wandering albatross. The World of Nature, 300 spectacular photos with additional fascinating information. A book to treasure. Yours, as a thank you from 13 for your $50 membership pledge.
I wish there were a way to convince you non-members how much 13 needs your support without wasting the time of all of you who are already members. I guess it would mean 2 13s, one for members with all shows and no pledge breaks, and one for non-members who just take the station for granted. Now, since last March, we've treated all of you like members. It's been all shows and no pledge breaks like this one. We canceled August and December. We're proud of that experiment. We want to do it again. But we can't treat you all like members when almost 9 out of 10 of you remain silent. Now, this March drive is for you non-members. It's essential that we receive your call and your pledge. Then we can go back to all shows and no interruptions again.
That's it. The break is over. Your pledge will make this time well spent. Thank you.
Thank you for taking that opportunity to make your pledge. And now, part 3 of NOVA's Sail Wars.
From day one, a key element in Sail America's strategy was to do as much actual sailing as possible. Hawaii's consistent winds, which are as strong as those that blow off Western Australia, made it an ideal place to test boats and train crew.
Even though this has evolved to be very much a design contest as opposed to a sailing contest, I think that the people product will still be a major factor in the outcome, or at least a factor in the outcome. So it's important that the crew be able to perform up at their best, and to do so, obviously, they have to have a full commitment. And in the case of our guys, they've been working from 5 in the morning till 9 at night, 6 days a week, for 17 months to prepare for this, and all this is without any financial compensation.
This isn't a sport. You know, the only people that say it's sport are people like you, you know, the correspondents and the news people. You know, it's a sport in the sense that it's a competition, but to us and the people that are going to have to do this thing, it's not a sport, it's your life. You have to be able to endure pain. You have to train in pain. And on the last beat, you know, when you have to wear that guy down, it doesn't make any difference if you're in front of him or in back of him. If you're going to grind him down until he can't sail anymore, you better be ready to endure the pain, because chances are the guys on the other boat are going to be able to endure the pain. And at the end of that race, there's only going to be one guy across the line, and it's a guy that can deal with that kind of pain and continue to make the contribution that's going to be on the boat that's across the line first. It's going to be us.
It's not only in the weight room or out sailing that the crew is expected to work hard. They're responsible for keeping the boats and gear tuned and race ready. And even with over 40 sailors and support personnel in Honolulu, the workday often extends well into the night. Such an intensive schedule can dull the competitive fire, but with the help of Hollywood, the crew manages to stay motivated.
Man, all this stuff you've heard about America not wanting to fight, wanting to stay out of the war, is a lot of horse dung. Americans traditionally love to fight. All real Americans love the sting of battle. When you were kids, you all admired the champion marble shooter, fastest runner, big league ball players, the toughest boxer. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time. My God, I actually pity those poor bastards we're going up against. My God, I do. We're not just going to shoot the bastard. We're going to cut out their living guts and use them to grease the treads of our tanks. We're going to murder those lousy hunt bastards by the bushel.
By late winter, the crew was psyched and ready to take on the world with Stars and Stripes 85. The design team was also in high gear, preparing for the final push that would make Stars and Stripes 87 a reality.
I sort of know one thing you'll see right away.
In early March, a conference call was scheduled so John Marshall could give the trustees of the syndicate the design team's final recommendations for the new boat. One crucial question still to resolve was how long a boat to build. The question of length had resurfaced after the arrival of intelligence reports about the enemy.
You can see the pictures, I just don't want the names of the people supplied in those cases. They're rolling.
These are done by underwater holography?
No. They're just,
done by photographers.
they're just plain old photography. The names of the photographers are on the back.
I can't believe you will pass around. I give them all credit.
The competition was building shorter boats. This was confirmed when 15 America's Cup contenders showed up for the 12-meter World Championships, a regatta in Fremantle in early 1986.
Looking down the dimensions, the KZ-5 boats, the two Kiwi boats, don't seem to be especially long because we believe their J is 25. They seem to have a normal-looking sail plan, so they must...
The idea that they might have the longest boat competing for the America's Cup made the Sail America team nervous.
Probably longer than 45 feet because
What we have to do is two different things. You have to look at what would be an optimum boat if you didn't have any idea who the opponent was. And the other thing is, once you know something about the enemy, you have to have an optimum boat to race against that particular enemy. And the two solutions are entirely different. Mathematically, strategically, game theoretically, however you go about doing it, they're different situations. The optimum solution isn't to pick the boat that in a vacuum would be perfect. It's to pick the boat that gives the best probability of beating these other 13 guys.
Though their weather analysis had led them to design and build long boats, it had also left them out on a limb. Common sense said, stay long, but not so much longer than the competition. And that's eventually what they settled on. Stars and Stripes 87 would be almost 2 feet shorter than 85. Having settled on a length, it was time to make a final commitment to the Model 32 design. Though her test results had been very good, some team members still felt that she was too radical, too risky a design. Marshall and Clay Oliver reviewed test data for other candidate designs and ran hundreds of computer-simulated races between them and Model 32. An hour before the conference call, two possibilities remained, Models 30 and 32.
Model 30 is what we might call a more conservative model. It goes less far away from traditional yacht design trends, and its characteristic, I think, is that it is a more broadly competent sort of a boat and has good performance characteristics pretty much across the board. Model 32, first of all, is more radical, which I think does imply a certain amount more risk-taking. What we're buying with that chance is a boat that shows some real brilliance in the design target conditions.
Marshall didn't make up his mind until 10 minutes before the call came through. When it did, he recommended building Model 32 and making her almost 2 feet shorter than Stars and Stripes 85 and 86. He was then stunned to hear arguments from Connor and others against building a third boat at all. The issue was money. The call ended without resolution. The board would look for more money, but without it, the future of Stars and Stripes 87 didn't look promising.
All right. Yeah, so long. Whew. Not easy, no. Well, it's very discouraging and depressing to people working on a technical problem to put intense concentration and effort onto it and ultimately to have come through a period of real doubt whether they could do something better, finally find a superior solution and something that looks really promising, and then ultimately find that you can't find the funds to build it. So it's a downer from that point of view.
Well, yacht designers from the beginning of time always are confident that their boat is going to be the best thing since sliced bread, but that after you've been around a while, you realize that all their dreams and their best of intentions don't always come to fruition. I saw in 1974 how a boat that was supposedly going to be a major breakthrough was one of the slowest 12 meters ever to be designed. In 1977, the Enterprise Syndicate spent several $100,000 in designing a keel that was supposedly going to be a breakthrough, and Courageous, a 5-year-old boat, came out and beat it. So time and again, we've seen these designers tell us that what has been great in the tank is going to come out and whip up on the old boats, but we've seen that not be the case.
Sailors, I think, always are worried. Maybe distrustful is a good word, but they're certainly worried that they are dependent on something that they can't control, and it's just a very human reaction. And in Dennis's case particularly, he's been dependent on design that he couldn't control before, and it let him down. So he's not surprisingly worried this time. It's a responsibility that we have to try to do the best we can. We're all much more than committed to good design. We're committed to winning. But that isn't going to allay anybody's fears until they get the boat in their hands and can sail it and are sure it's what they need.
If Stars and Stripes 87 was to prove she was more than a great idea, Sail America's fundraisers would have to work overtime, intensifying their courtship of corporate sponsors.
Rather than go to corporate America with our hand out, we designed the program, as the Olympics did, in a partnership marketing mode. That is to say, we offer corporations the opportunity to market their product and services around the involvement of Sail America and the America's Cup, or we offer them corporate perks where they can come out and visit with us, get on the inside of the camp, see what we're doing from a technical standpoint, and it's working. It worked with the Olympics, it's working with us.
Sail America's projected budget approached $15 million. When Stars and Stripes 87 was put on hold, over $5 million was still to be found. Yet after 10 days of thinking it over, the trustees decided they couldn't afford not to build a new boat. They'd gone too far to go to Australia with less than their best. With the decision to proceed, a series of last-minute decisions had to be made. The most important involved the curve of the deck, or shear line.
The technically best thing would be to have a shear line that looked like that and a flat deck there. But all the designers agree that in case of argument, we don't want to disagree with the crew because that would be a mistake to get in trouble on that. And that's why John proposed the 0.3 of a foot.
This was a question that had both a technical and a not-so-technical side.
So the more you can bring the deck
I
line
can't
in.
believe that aerodynamically it's not better, and weight-wise it's not better, and resistance through the water. So why isn't anybody else doing it? It's ugly?
Yeah, but we can dress it up to make it look good.
We've already gone ugly. We can go all the way now.
We could paint it red.
And it's going to be difficult to style that to look what you would say is pretty, but if it's well executed, it could look pretty racy. And if it's first across the finish line, it'd be a pretty good looking bow. Be perfect.
Before the boat builder begins cutting metal, full-size drawings of the boat's lines are made. This is a process called lofting. It's done to ensure the boat's lines are fair or completely smooth, without discontinuity.
The final boat that's going to go in the ocean has to be fair in every direction. The water has to flow over it with no drag. And the sea is going to discover any imperfections or bumps or discontinuities in that surface. So it has to be lofted full scale, where the human eye, which is really the most precise computer of all, can see the fairness of the lines and detect anything that's wrong. And this lofting of the boat full scale is traditionally a very time-consuming process that takes a great deal of skill. We've tried to squeeze that process down to the minimum amount of time by using computer-aided lofting as an intermediary step.
For over a week, designer David Pedrick and his associate Sean Fawcett worked day and night, creating a numerical version of the plans for Stars and Stripes 87. With these numbers, full-scale drawings of the boat could be produced on mylar strips 60 feet long. Time is running out. The lofted plans have to be completed tonight and delivered to the boat builder in the morning. If they're not, the boat may not be completed before the team departs for Australia.
Well, it's early by most standards. It's 12:30 in the evening, and see, last time I was in bed was Saturday afternoon, and it's now Monday night. No, it's Tuesday night. So I guess it was Sunday afternoon. And never decide what sort of a boat they want until the last minute. And then you have 12 days to get a boat properly designed, and normally it should take about 3 weeks. A little unnerving, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
At 10 a.m. the next morning, the plans for Stars and Stripes 87 were delivered to the Director Boatyard in Mamaroneck, New York. Construction of an all-aluminum 12-meter hull takes 3 months. The process begins with fabrication of the skeleton, which is made up of thousands of precisely cut individual pieces of aluminum that are checked against the full-size plans and then welded together to standards set by Lloyd's of London. These initial stages of construction are time-consuming, but they can't be hurried, even when the competition seems to be way ahead. On May 16th, the New York Yacht Club christened its 3rd new boat. The party was crashed by the Chicago Yacht Club's new boat, Heart of America, which had been launched the day before.
I christen thee America 2.
At the same time, interesting gossip about the San Francisco boat was making the rounds.
Well, we've got a pretty good indication now that the San Francisco group is experimenting with, or will be experimenting with, a forward rudder. And we already know from our own experimentation that you can't steer a 12-meter with only a forward rudder. And in fact, optimally, you're going to end up using an aft rudder for steering. So the question is, what's the forward rudder for? Well, most likely, it's really going to be a volume-carrying pod that would possibly form a wave that would cancel the primary wave of the boat and reduce the total wave drag. That might be fairly threatening, and I think we're going to have to do something about it in terms of exploring, first of all, does it really make the boat go faster? And secondly, really tracking down the rules interpretation with the International Yacht Racing Union.
The fear in your mind is that maybe somebody developed something that we didn't think of and didn't test or didn't try, didn't consider, and maybe they have something that is radically faster than anybody else and is going to blow everybody out of the water, make you look bad. Who knows who's going to be the one who comes up with something that no one else thought of.
While the designers worried, the boat they counted on to put their worries to rest was beginning to take shape. By the end of May, Stars and Stripes 87 was up off the floor. The framing was complete, and quarter-inch aluminum plates were being cut, bent, and welded into place. Though everyone hoped construction could be completed ahead of schedule to allow the crew more time to sail her in Hawaii, the boatyard was already pushing hard just to finish on time. As hull construction continued in New York, work on a keel began in Los Angeles. The keel is cast in a giant sand mold using molten lead. When finished, it'll weigh nearly 45,000 pounds, nearly 3 times the weight of the rest of the boat. Keelco will make keels for almost all of the American syndicates. They've developed a secret lead alloy that's heavier and stronger than any other in the world.
We used to have a metallurgist that worked for us that came from South America, and he brought up a book with him from South America that was written by the Nazis back in '38. And the Nazis and currently the Germans now are doing some excellent work in lead metallurgy. And with this, we've been able to achieve this extremely high strength.
Besides having the best lead alloy, Huseman treats his 12-meter keels with almost religious care. Bringing the cup back home has become, for Don Huseman, almost a personal mission.
On these keels now, my goal is to get the American Cup back. As a keel maker, my goal is to make the winning American Cup keel, not the losing. Our dedication to this is 100%, that anything it requires, we will do. And when we started seeing the Australian commercials that say, if you don't know where Australia is, that's where the Cup's at, my youngest son used to, jokingly say, I'm so ashamed of my father, but it bothers me. It really bothers me. I don't think as much as Dennis, but I want that Cup back.
Pouring lead in such large quantities is an art. It's also difficult and dangerous. Lead shrinks as it cools. Keeping the surface molten for the 20 or more hours it takes for the bottom to cool means more lead can be added as it shrinks. Any impurities will weaken the keel. Enough will make it useless. With 45,000 pounds of lead, there's the constant possibility that the mold will leak and break apart. And finally, some of Huseman's secret ingredients are explosive. Yet this time, everything works perfectly. The keel measures accurately to within 1/16th of an inch, and the lines are fair to within 5 or 6 1/1000ths of an inch. With the new hull and keel seemingly under control, there was now time to panic about sails.
I'm basically discouraged about the sail testing program at the moment. We've put enormous emphasis on the boat design. I think that's made us very vulnerable to being complacent in the sense that the sails aren't getting the attention they got in '80 when we felt sails would be the breakthrough, '83 when we worked very, very hard on our sails. Sails are the power of a sailboat. That's the motor, and you can't disregard it. We're just starting serious sail testing. We know that if we don't have excellent sails, we'll be giving away increments of speed that are as big as the things we've been talking about. We talk about 4 or 5 seconds a mile. It's possible, easily possible, to lose 4 or 5 seconds a mile with inferior sails.
A sail shape is determined by how two-dimensional pieces of fabric are sewn together. How that fabric is cut and seamed determines how good a three-dimensional airfoil is created. Getting those curves right used to be an art form. Today, computers have begun to turn the process into a science. Danish engineer Michael Rickelson creates computer programs to help sail designers refine their ideas. He describes how one stage in the process works.
Having created sort of an idea in my mind of what sail I want to see, I can use our computer to generate that sail, and I input my numbers. I may have sort of a database of sails I already built, and I call one of those up, get it up on the screen, and I sort of look at it from different angles. I can rotate it, zoom in on critical areas, and get a feel for what is it. Then I go back, change some of the numbers, I call it up on the screen again, and get to know the sail that I'm going to build.
One of Rickelson's programs models how the sail will respond to specific wind speeds and directions. The resulting pressure gradients across each sail are represented by colored bars. From this, the designers know if the side force on their sails will overbalance the lifting force of the keel. Also, it's possible to see how the two sails are interacting and if they are interfering with each other.
We've gotten a pretty good feeling for what shapes work, what shapes are fast, what don't work, what works in rough water, what works in smooth water. The big consideration for us now is how to get that shape to stay that shape over a period of time. It doesn't help to come up with a real fast sail that changes shape the second time you put it up.
Computers are helping here as well by predicting the stress and strain on the sailcloth and indicating how and where stretching is likely to occur. The sail designers can then choose the right fabric, Kevlar, Mylar, Dacron, or combinations of the three, design the best layout for the pieces of fabric, and then sew seams and reinforcing that will help the sail hold its shape.
And we feel that if we can slowly but surely come up with a sail that we think is a fast shape, that will last through a very wide range of wind strengths and a very wide range of conditions, that we have a leg up on being faster than our competitors. So if you believe that that's true, then you also must believe that if you don't do this analytically through computer programs and stress and strain analysis, there's a very good chance of missing on something.
Sail making and testing is a long process, one that will go on even after the trials have begun. In fact, Sail America will have its own mini sail loft in Australia that will be nipping and tucking through the nights between races, refining sails in the hopes of shaving a few more seconds off Stars and Stripes' time around the course. By June 13th, Stars and Stripes 87 was looking more and more like a real boat. While the deck and interior received some final welding, the hull got a first coat of micro balloons, an epoxy resin, which when dry can be planed and sanded to a perfectly smooth or fair line. On June 27th, 5 a.m., the finished boat began a 2-week journey from Mamaroneck, New York to Honolulu, Hawaii. Upon her arrival, Dennis Conner would have less than 2 weeks to decide if she was the best thing since sliced bread. Conner knew and liked Stars and Stripes 85. He was prepared to sail her in the America's Cup. If Stars and Stripes 87 was going to be Sail America's race boat, she'd have to prove her stuff right out of the box.
Looks like a good boat. She seems to be working out just as our design team forecast, which is encouraging. We have been pleasantly surprised to see her be able to keep up with a boat that's been in the water for 9 months. It's been finely tuned and looked after in every way. So I think things are promising. And over the next 6 weeks down in Perth, we hope to fine-tune her and get the most out of it. And I'm guardedly optimistic that it'll come through and be everything we hope.
Stars and Stripes 87 had passed her first test. In Australia, there would be many more challenges to come, but 87 was going to get a chance to pass the ball.
It's so hard to say at this stage whether this is a great boat. We all have the feeling that she's living up to the promise that we'd seen in the early design stages and the preliminary testing of the concept. Our big question mark now is, where is the rest of the world? How far have they come? These people are very, very capable. They're people I respect a lot, the people we're competing with in the design environment. And if there's some hesitation, it's simply out of respect for everybody else in the world. This is going to have an absolute reading. It's either going to be faster or it's not. We're going to know without any question whether we've succeeded. Better, perhaps, than scientists in most cases ever do know how good their creation is. And that's very, very exciting, and it's very strong. It's not something that lets you sleep easily at night every night.
Stars and Stripes proved she was all her designers had predicted, and maybe more. Beginning in October, she took 37 of her 44 races to win the right to challenge the Australian defender. Then in February, she sailed to 4 straight decisive victories and brought the America's Cup home.
The calendar may say spring, but it's still downright cold in parts of the country, especially in Detroit, where boating enthusiasts are finding that it's just as much fun sailing on ice as it is on water. Sailors who look like snowmen skimming across the ice, Arctic winds snapping through their sails. As Christian Science Monitor correspondent Rob Nelson reports, it may be cold, but ice boating is red hot.
Skimming across the ice up to 50 miles per hour, 15-degree air snapping through their sails and across their faces, you wonder, why do they do it?
You get out in the outdoors, it's fast, and it's just really nice. I'd hate to be inside all winter long, and this gets you out.
What I like most about the sport is sailing fast
and then I can sail year-round from summer to winter sailing.
It's really exhilarating. There's no other sailing that you just accelerate like a rocket ship. You sheet in and you blast off.
In ice boating, unlike most world competition sports, women compete equally with men.
We've got quite a few women racing at a local level, and they don't really travel to regattas as much. Hopefully we'll get more. As time goes on, they'll get in a car and come to the big regattas.
To really appreciate this sport, you have to meet Don Abrams, the only racer with a colored sail.
These are not your normal races. Here you've got the best in the world. It's a silent kind of sport. It's an individual kind of thing. You're competing against other people, but really you're competing against yourself. Ice boating is probably unique in world-class sports where you don't have to start when you're young and go through years and years and years of training.
Beautiful sunset or not, it sure does look
Normal races. Here you've got the best in the world. It's a silent kind of sport. It's an individual kind of thing. You're competing against other people, but really you're competing against yourself. Ice boating is probably unique in world-class sports where you don't have to start when you're young and go through years and years and years of training. You can go to Europe and you can go to the various sites here in this country, and you're in an Olympic-class sport, but you're just a person. And that's different. It's different from all the other world-level sports. You have these guys from overseas who come from varied and different cultures. We've had in years past the Russians, Poles, East Germans, West Germans, Czechoslovakians. There's a sort of a, I don't know, a universality to the human spirit when you're all together and government philosophies sort of disappear, and what you talk about, are your runners sharp? How did you get the angle on that? Who's your sail made by? Does your mast bend? The technicalities of the sport sort of supersede any political or any personal levels of consideration.
Were the winners? Well, officially, Mike O'Brien from New Jersey came in first. Henry Bossett, also from the United States, came in second. And Stan McClure from Poland took third place. But if you were to measure winning by the joy these sailors expressed just being there, they all took top honors.
The New Yorker. It is not the ordinary person who would eagerly await a visitor such as this. It is not the ordinary
person. This is WLIW-TV, Garden City, New York. Here are 3 grades of meat: prime, choice, and good. Do you know what the difference is between them besides the price? I'll be back in a moment with the answer. The difference between the grades of meat, prime, choice, and good, is the amount of fats in the meat, and that's what's called marbling. You see, it's the fat that runs through the meat, lubricating it as it cooks. The standards for grading are set by the United States Department of Agriculture, and prime is the most marbled and the most expensive. How the meat gets that way depends on the strain of cattle and how the cattle are fed. And we're going to hear about it from Denny Dolmich, a cattle farmer in Grundy Center, Iowa, who is on the board of directors of the Iowa Cattlemen's Association.
In this farming operation, which is basically a family farm, we feed around 4,000 head of cattle a year. As the price of the ingredients that go into producing the cattle become higher and higher priced, it's essential that we produce a beef that will be as most efficient as possible. These cattle have genetic potential to far outweigh the normal type of cattle that you put in feedlots. They will gain anywhere from 2.5 to as high as 4 pounds a day, and they will be going to market at about 1,200 pounds. Cattle will eat what is appealing to them. They won't eat everything, and if you want them to gain properly, you've got to have a high-quality feed in front of them. These cattle are eating a diet consisting of about 2% of their body weight of corn. In other words, they're consuming about 20 pounds of corn per day and about the same amount in corn silage. In other words, they're getting quite a bit of roughage. But this meat contains less fat, and cattle will be palatable, will be juicy, will be tender without the amount of fat that we used to think we needed. Leaner beef is definitely in the picture today because of the fact that while everybody's diet conscious, they have a tendency to think that fat is not what they want in their diet, but they still like the taste of beef, and today we're producing a beef that has the taste appeal that we used to produce with a lot of fat without the unnecessary expense of putting the fat on.
Eating leaner cuts of beef gives us all the advantages of meat without a high amount of saturated fats, and therefore with fewer calories and less cholesterol. Meat is one of the richest sources of protein available to us, so it is good to include a moderate amount of meat in your diet. But huge portions of even leaner cuts will give you more protein and more fat than you need. When buying ground meat, the leaner is more expensive than the fatty meat. It doesn't need that fat to tenderize it, and there's no waste. Now, many supermarkets will help you to choose the leaner ground meat. They identify the packages just like this: extra lean, lean, or regular. So take advantage of that, and take advantage of the other meat protein sources such as chicken and turkey, which are lower in calories than beef. But do remove that skin because most of the fat is in there. And don't forget fish, which in general has less fat than red meat. Meat is a good protein source, but it's not a total diet. It lacks some vitamins and some minerals that your body needs. And also be careful about those high-protein diets that are advertised for weight loss. They really can be hazardous to your health. Now, I'm going to show you how to make a very lean beef dish. This is London broiled pomodoro. And don't forget to have a pencil and paper ready to jot down the ingredients because we'll be giving you the recipe at the end of the program. Now, I'm going to start with a flank steak. And we've got a really lovely one here, nice and lean. Look at that. Practically no fat in it. It's about 2 pounds, and this will serve 6 to 8 people. So remember that 1/4 pound per person is just about all everybody's getting. And also remember, too, that meat that's cooked well, like we're going to be doing with this one, has less fat. So you're really a lot better off. We've got a marinade over here, and I'd like to show you what the ingredients are. Part 1 is you simply start with some green pepper, a green chili, and remember, please, use that to taste because it can be very, very spicy. A little bit of garlic and some onion. And you saute these, like I'm doing right here, in a teaspoon or less of oil, really until the onions get transparent, just a few minutes. And now to this, we're going to add 2.5 cups of chopped canned tomatoes. You just simply pour this into those ingredients and then add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. This is really a good ingredient to add because it thickens it up and adds a little bit of flavor. I'm going to sprinkle in some mustard sauce too, and you can do that to season. Now stir this around, and you're going to want to cook it for approximately 45 minutes or until it gets nice and thick, just like the sauce that we have right here. Doesn't that look good? Now we're going to go over and put this onto the London broil. And what you'd like to do is spoon this or go ahead and brush it over the top of your flank steak, cover it completely. Now 2 things to remember. Not only does the tomato sauce pomodoro add a really nice flavor, but it will also tenderize your flank steak. So put approximately 3/4 of a cup on one side, and then take this over to your broiler. Put it as high up and as close to the flame as you possibly can, and broil this for approximately 5 to 6 minutes, depending on the thickness of your steak. As soon as that's done, go back, brush the other side of the steak with the rest of the sauce, and you can save a little for your plate if you'd like, and voila, you're all ready. Now let's go over and see just how delicious this steak pomodoro looks. I really hope you'll enjoy our London broiled pomodoro. It's good for you, and you can eat lean and be lean.
Watch out for all those calories that tend to build up fat.
Avoid too much cholesterol. Keep your arteries intact.
Hey, eat more starch and fiber foods. They'll help you keep it trim.
But have to salt and liquor, moderate what you take in.
Variety must be the key.
In everything we eat.
And exercise will make the plan complete.
Exercise will make the plan complete.
Local broadcast of the Nightly Business Report is brought to you by Maine Herdman, a national firm of certified public accountants serving the needs of the business community with quality services for over 80 years.
In Detroit and around the nation, two companies are waging a marketing battle to determine who will be king of the milk carton makers. In the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, local businesses and residents are feeling the effects of being closely tied to the Mexican economy. And in St. Paul, Minnesota, Walter Heller looks at government units that are running budget surpluses rather than deficits.
Those and other stories on the Nightly Business Report. With Del Frank, Linda O'Brien, and Paul Kangas. Brought to you by Digital Equipment Corporation, the world's second largest computer company, providing computer solutions for professionals from professionals. Pacific Telesis Group, including Pacific Bell and the Pactel companies, leading the way in the information age. And public television stations throughout the nation. Now, the Nightly Business Report.
Good evening, everyone. The U.S. Supreme Court today affirmed the right of companies on the verge of bankruptcy to unilaterally cancel union contracts. Ruling unanimously in the case of Bell Disco, a New Jersey building supply firm that filed for bankruptcy 4 years ago, the justices held that troubled firms may void their labor contracts even before they receive the bankruptcy court's approval to do so. However, the justices said that any abrogation of contracts must eventually be approved by a bankruptcy judge. The ruling is seen as a major blow to organized labor, and the head of the International Association of Machinists, William Wimpesinger, told correspondent Rodney Ward, the AFL-CIO may seek congressional action to clarify when a company is in dire financial straits.
We have no beef with bankruptcy per se, legitimate, honest-to-God bankruptcies, but for otherwise viable firms that aren't having difficulty except in their projections, getting immediate access, I think, is outrageous. And we think Congress ought to legislate more carefully the threshold requirements to get into bankruptcy. And once they do that, then when you're talking to somebody in the bargaining process, you have a very clear picture of exactly what you're dealing with and what the prospects and probabilities are. And we would favor that.
Winpesinger's union is currently on strike against Continental Airlines, which broke contracts with its unions when it filed for bankruptcy last year. Linda?
Mesa Petroleum, which lost a proxy battle with Gulf Corporation earlier this year, today launched a full-scale war to gain control of Gulf. Mesa announced that it intends to offer $65 a share in cash for up to 13.5 million Gulf shares. Combined with the nearly 22 million Gulf shares that are already in the hands of a group headed by Mesa, that would give Mesa the ability to seat its own candidates on Gulf's board. In New York, Dean Witter oil analyst Al Silber had these comments on the objectives of Mesa Petroleum Chairman T. Boone Pickens in trying to gain control of Gulf.
I think this is
in my view, an action to accomplish what he set out to accomplish, control of Gulf, or forcing Gulf management to consider a sale of the company to a friendly party who would pay enough for Gulf shares to give the Mesa investor group the profit they're looking for.
In Pittsburgh, a spokesman for Gulf said the company has no response at this time to the Mesa move. Gulf stock today closed at 58 3/8. That was up 5 3/4, while Mesa Petroleum stock closed at 15 7/8, up 3/4. Let's now find out who won in today's battle on Wall Street. Paul?
Thank you, Linda. The relentless 6-week slide in the stock market continued yesterday as the Dow Industrial Average lost 9.5 points to close at the 1139 level, which made it a net loser of just over 147 points since the first week of this year. Because of the precipitous nature of the decline, a good many money managers who had built up adequate cash reserves were getting quite itchy to do some serious buying in the belief a strong technical rebound was in the offing, but they all seemed to be waiting for someone else to make the first move. Since no one did early today, the market's first move was down, with the Dow Industrial Average falling another 5.5 points at the outset. But finally, a little buying support came into the blue chip sector, and the Industrial Average trimmed its loss to about 2 3/4 points by the end of the first hour of trading. Declining stocks still held a solid 7-4 lead over gainers, however. Opening hour volume expanded to 25 million shares from 18.5 million yesterday. The midday hours brought some more cautious buying in the blue chips, as well as in a number of standard institutional glamour issues like Motorola, Digital Equipment, and Teledyne. Keeping somewhat of a lid on outright bullish enthusiasm, however, was carryover strength from yesterday in the precious metals issues, suggesting renewed concern over the return of inflation and its dire consequences. Nevertheless, at 1 o'clock, the Industrial Average moved up to post almost a 3-point gain, as losers saw their margin over winners narrow to a 7-6 ratio. The fledgling rally ran into tough sledding as afternoon trading continued. First off, the volume just wasn't impressive enough to attract many fence-sitters, and the reason for that was that they wanted to hear what President Reagan had to say at tonight's nationally televised press conference. By 3 o'clock, then, the Industrial Average eased back to post less than a 1-point gain, as losers led gainers 820 to 650. Increasing concern over the Middle East situation, including the Iran-Iraq war, and hesitation ahead of today's short interest figures knocked support from under the market in the final hour, and the Dow Industrial Average slumped to a closing loss of 5.13 at 1134.21. Transport index off 1.64, the only gaining average. The utilities up a 1/4 point, fractional losses in all the broadly based indexes. Then the New York Exchange said that short interest in the month ending February 15th fell 14.5 million shares to 188,664,000. On the American Exchange, short interest fell 1.8 million shares to 12,568,000. That's our first look at Wall Street. Back with the details shortly. Linda?
Gold prices turned in a strong performance today. In London, gold closed at $394.75, up $6.25. In New York, gold closed just under the $400 an ounce level at $399.70, up $11.30. Silver soared to $9.72.5, up 47 cents. Dealers said trading was very active, with buying sparked by continued fears that Iran may block crude oil shipments to the West. The dollar retreated sharply today. In New York, the dollar closed at 2.66 German marks, down from 2.69 marks, and it closed at 8.22 French francs, down from 8.32 francs. Del?
Well, Linda, Treasury Secretary Donald Regan today said that while high interest rates are part of the reason for the dollar's comparative strength against foreign currencies, they do not fully account for the dollar's rise. Speaking to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Regan said the dollar has been pushed up largely by flows of foreign investments into this country. Of course, they're attracted here by the nation's political stability and the American stock markets. The Treasury Secretary also rejected government intervention as a means of bringing the dollar's value down.
2 months ago, we reported that Congressman Stuart McKinney of Connecticut was under investigation for possible violations of a law that prevents Americans from cooperating with the Arab boycott of Israel. A Commerce Department agency has now formally charged Congressman McKinney with violating that law, and if the charge is upheld by an administrative law judge, he could be fined $10,000. McKinney, who denies any wrongdoing, allegedly sent a letter to the government of Kuwait about relationships between firms on the Arab boycott blacklist and a company in his district.
Everyone has his or her favorite brand of milk, but few people think about the type of container it comes in. In the good old days, it used to be glass, but nowadays, of course, milk almost always comes in either plastic or cardboard. And there's heated competition for market dominance in the segment of the business of America that makes milk containers. Shelley Seisler of our Detroit Bureau reports that this milk packaging battle is about to come to a boil.
The conflict began 2 years ago when Excello Corporation, based in Troy, Michigan, introduced its new 2-pack in an effort to compete with plastic gallon jugs, which now capture 90% of all gallon milk sales.
From the moment children are born, they need the nourishment you find in milk.
At that same time, the Paperboard Packaging Council launched this ad campaign, telling the public that milk packaged in plastic loses important nutrients when exposed to light on grocery store shelves or kitchen tables. The new product was seen as a legitimate marketing tool by Excello's competition, Hoover Universal of Ann Arbor, Michigan, now the only manufacturer of equipment that makes the plastic jugs. But the TV and newspaper ads raised eyebrows.
They have taken some pretty strong stands from our standpoint with some research or so-called research to support their position. We have likewise done research on that portion of the business, and we cannot find anything to substantiate the position they've taken.
They have their side of the story as far as how long milk sits on the shelf and whether the light damage is that severe. Certainly the evidence that we've seen suggests that milk does indeed sit in the dairy case long enough for damage to occur, and that not just the vitamin content, but also the taste of the milk is affected.
Ironically enough, the confusion lies in the facts. Both sides have volumes of information that prove the other side wrong. But cut through all the bickering, and one thing is clear. Both corporations have a vested interest in what happens with milk sales. Like Hoover, Excello manufactures the equipment to produce milk cartons. Excello is top dog among 4 other companies, but also holds patents on the gable-top container. While Excello remains tight-lipped about profits, they do say the sale of dairy equipment is part of a division which makes up 28% of the total company. Hoover, on the other hand, volunteers a divisional sales figure of $50 million in 1982. And Burrington says dairy machines constitute a goodly portion of that. Plastic jugs now account for 60% of all milk sales. And with the introduction of the new cost-competitive half-gallons, Hoover is looking to grab even more of the market. In spite of that, Excello says there hasn't been an appreciable difference in its business. But what about the future?
The share of market that the plastic container has achieved to date, I don't believe is going to increase tremendously from what it is today.
The paper people, if they lose half-gallon, there's no sense for them to remain in the board business, because the amount of half pints or third quarts, the 10-ounce packages for school milk program and that kind, the amount of volume that there is there isn't enough to keep the converting plants open.
And finally, both sides don't even agree on what kind of impact the Paperboard Council's ads have had. Excello says they've increased paper carton sales significantly, while Hoover Universal has commissioned its own study because it's not convinced. In Detroit, I'm Shelley Seisler for the Nightly Business Report.
Well, unless the stock market improves soon, Paul, a lot of investors are going to have to forego their daily milk and cookies.
This market's acting like a soggy ginger snap. Let's have a look at those closing averages for proof. The industrial's down over 5 points again. Transport's off 1 2/3. The only gainer, the utility index, up 1/4 of a point. Fractional losses and all the other averages. Trading volume today perked up considerably. I guess all those bears came back from the long weekend. Up volume exceeded by down volume by a considerable margin. The advanced decline ratio 9 to 6 in favor of losers. Only 5 new highs for the year, 111 new lows. Gulf Corporation topped the active list, of course, in response to that $65 a share bid by the Mesa Petroleum Group, up 5 3/4. Penn Central's involved, too, because they bought $300 million of Mesa securities to help finance the package. American Telephone, up 1/8. GTE lost 5/8. IBM, the subject of the Heard on the Street column in the Wall Street Journal about its portable computer, down 1/4 today. Continental Illinois, 5th in activity, down 1/2. Pan Am lost 1/4, Ford down 1/8. Baxter Travanol, a big loser yesterday when the company forecast lower first-quarter earnings, off another 5/8 today. National Semiconductor edged up 1/8, and so did General Electric, which was 10th in activity. ASA Limited, there you see the strong gold stocks, up 4 1/8. Cigna lost 1/8, even though it boosted its quarterly dividend from 62 to 65 cents a share. DuPont edged up 1/4, Kodak down 3/8, Exxon up 3/8 in a fairly firm oil group. General Motors showed no change. Katie Industries, which tumbled over 4 points yesterday, the company could think of no reason, rebounded today, up 1 1/8. U.S. Industries was up 1 3/8. Apparently there was a positive article about the company in today's Boston Globe. Howell Corporation, which is in the process of buying out a subsidiary, Hull Petroleum, up 1 1/2. Dome Mines Limited, another strong gold stock, up 1 1/8. Charter Company Warrants down 1 1/8. Charter Company is spinning off its insurance subsidiary. Heston Corporation, which makes harvesting equipment and tractors, being plowed under 2.5 points today. The company reported yesterday a $2.6 million fourth quarter loss. NL Industries plunging 1 1/4. The company slashed its quarterly dividend from 25 cents to only 5 cents. Over in the American Exchange, just about an 8-point gain in the market value index. Trading volume up nicely from yesterday's pace, and just a few more issues down than up. Topping the active list, Dorchester Gas, the subject of a $24 a share tender offer from Damson Oil, gained a quarter today. Echo Bay Mines, a big percentage move, up 1 1/8. The company announced a joint venture for a silver mine in Canada. Dome Petroleum lost 1/8, while Wang Labs B-Stock gained that much. Fifth in activity on the curb, Key Pharmaceutical down 3/4. Continental Materials plunging 6 1/8. The company couldn't account for the weakness, but just after the close, it reported lower fourth quarter earnings, 41 cents versus last year's 52 cents. Sun Air Electronics down 2 1/4. The company terminated merger discussions with BR Communications. Over-the-counter trading, just a small 0.08 loss in the composite index. Trading volume up about 8 million shares from yesterday's pace, and a few more issues down than up over-the-counter. Topping the active list, Apple Computer, good gainer, up 1 1/4. MCI lost a quarter. Chubb Corp down 1/2. Intergraph gained a quarter. American Greetings, fifth in activity, showed no change. Tel Labs gained 3/4. Intel up 5/8. Convergent Technologies gained a quarter. And Vol Reefs Exploration, a gold stock, up 8 1/4. Tandon Corp, 10th in volume, up 5/8. Newport Corporation up 3 points. I saw no specific news there. Texas Financial, or Federal Financial, has rejected a $65 million buyout bid from H.R. Bright as inadequate, apparently. And K-Pro Corp, mentioned in today's Heard on the Street column, up a full point. North American Phillips down 3/4, even though it announced a 2-for-1 split and a boost in the dividend. Key Banks, after the market closed, announced a 3-for-2 split and a boost in the dividend. And InterFirst Corporation down 1/2 after cutting its dividend in half from 30 cents quarterly to only 15 cents. Well, extending the little technical rally that got underway yesterday, bond prices opened higher today, but upon seeing retail demand was disappointingly light, traders turned seller for the rest of the session. The other major negative was a consensus that the durable goods orders and consumer price reports due out in the next 2 days would both be up strongly. Looking at the long-term government market, we see these treasuries of 2013 losing 12/32. American telephone bonds of 1990 closed at 93 1/8 bid, down 3/8. And the Adventist Health System bonds in the municipal market lost 1/8 to 98 1/4 bid, and no change at all today. And the Fed funds rate stayed at 9 5/8 all the time. And incidentally, after the close, it was announced that the $8.5 billion of 2-year Treasury notes were priced to yield an average 10.94%. That's the Wall Street wrap-up, Del.
Thank you, Paul. The Congressional Budget Office today released some new projections on the federal budget deficit. They contend that the Reagan administration underestimated the deficit contained in its proposed budget for the next fiscal year. According to the CBO, the Reagan budget would actually run up a $192 billion deficit, $12 billion more than the deficit estimated by the administration. In addition, the CBO said that contrary to White House forecasts, deficits are likely to increase steadily over the next 5 years to nearly $250 billion in 1989.
Yesterday, we reported on how a winter freeze has seriously damaged the agricultural industry of the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. But that's not the only segment of this largely rural economy that's experiencing problems. Tonight, in the second part of our 3-part focus on the Rio Grande Valley, we look at the region's ties to Mexico and on how economic problems across the border are affecting the valley. Greg Carbajal reports.
The sunny skies of the Texas Rio Grande Valley and the area's usually warm tropical climate are about the only things people around here are smiling about. And considering last month's freezing temperatures which destroyed most of the area's crops, even that's debatable. But most people here can live with the weather. It's the economy they're upset about. In one way or another, most people have been affected by the area's economic problems. Problems that started long before the freeze and which one of the area's congressmen blames on a traditional overdependence on Mexican trade.
We have been too dependent on the Mexican economy. I feel that it has been a disaster. It's good to have a good working relationship with the people of Mexico, for us to buy from them and for them to buy from us. But we need long-term jobs, and this is what we're looking at this point.
Hardest hit by the peso devaluation was the retail industry. The marketing director at this mall told us they had some of the nation's highest sales per square foot in 1981. By comparison, he says 1983 sales may fall by as much as 40%. Equally affected was the real estate industry. 3 years ago, houses like this one in the $200,000 range were selling quickly, some within a week of being listed. Today, the story is much different.
In 1983, I believe there were about 2,300 homes on the market, and about 26% of those have sold.
Meanwhile, overall business activity is substantially down, and federal bankruptcy officials say the area's bankruptcies have increased by 30% in the last 3 years, a figure they say continues to rise. And while government officials are making aid available, particularly through the Small Business Administration, most businessmen agree it's not the answer.
I don't think that loans are going to help. They'll help, but I mean it's not the answer. Loans are not going to help. Programs are not going to help. The only thing that's going to happen is that the strong will survive, sort of like the law of the jungle type thing, and the weaker ones are going to have to falter.
And as businesses have begun to falter, they've contributed to the area's biggest problem, unemployment. Even optimistic Bill Carr, chairman of the Valley 2000 Committee, admits thousands of jobs are needed just to keep unemployment from going above the 30% mark.
And it's our estimate that we have to create, on the average, of 9,000 to 11,000 new jobs annually to maintain status quo of the roughly 25 to 35% unemployment that we have in the Valley today.
Perhaps the only industry which has not contributed to the unemployment problem has been the tourist industry. It's remained relatively untouched by the region's economic problems. In fact, the area has shown growth largely because of the peso devaluation, which attracted many newcomers to the area. In addition, the Valley's old standbys, visitors from the Midwest, have continued their yearly migrations to escape the winter cold. But the tourist industry, which everyone agrees has great potential, is still relatively undeveloped. Many of the regular visitors are retired couples who travel in RVs and have relatively few needs. Consequently, they spend fewer dollars than the average tourist visiting California and Florida. Businessmen here try to minimize the situation by saying the area's economic problems are just the low end of a 10-year cycle. In 4 or 5 years, things here will be back to normal. But that's exactly what government officials are afraid of, because normal here means an economy heavily dependent on Mexico, double-digit unemployment, and one of the nation's highest percentage of people living below poverty level. From the Rio Grande Valley, I'm Greg Carvajal for the Nightly Business Report.
And tomorrow night, we conclude our series on the economy of the Rio Grande Valley with a look at the area's attempt to diversify into new industries.
Coming up, Walter Heller talks about the state of the 50 states' economies.
Longshoremen in Boston today approved a new 3-year contract ending the last of 4 strikes that recently idled ports on the East Coast. A longshoremen's union official said the Boston workers made sizable concessions following similar moves by longshoremen in Philadelphia and Hampton Roads, Virginia. The executive director of the Boston Shipping Association, Robert Calder, said assessments for cargo shipped into the Boston area will be increased by $1 a ton to pay for the costs of the settlement.
The state of Hawaii today averted a strike by 40,000 public employees when union leaders representing state and local government workers tentatively agreed on a new contract. Hawaii's Governor George Ariyoshi said the agreement with the 4 employee unions covers all economic issues, and one union leader said the settlement is considerably better than the state's previous offer. While union members must still vote on the contract, the settlement means that essential services will continue uninterrupted during the peak of Hawaii's tourist season.
In a blow to the film industry, a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee today temporarily dropped consideration of a bill that would allow film companies to charge royalty fees on videotapes and discs that are rented to the public. A coalition of video rental dealers had lobbied against the bill, claiming that it could substantially hike the cost of renting a video movie. On the other hand, the film industry claimed that with a provision for royalties on rentals, it would be able to cut in half the sales price of video cassettes.
In tonight's commentary, University of Minnesota professor and former presidential advisor Walter Heller gives us his perspective on why many state governments are not seeing red these days.
Mr. Reagan is strengthening state governments in a way he never intended. He put them in a painful fiscal bind by shoving responsibilities onto them and cutting back federal aids at the same time that their revenues were slashed by a deep recession while sky-high interest rates curbed their borrowing. This forced big tax increases at the state-local level in the very teeth of that recession. States alone boosted taxes by over $15 billion in 81-83 and cut spending so sharply that their total outlays in real terms actually fell for the first time since World War II. Now the chickens coming home to roost are turning out to be geese laying golden eggs. Those tax hikes are generating big state surpluses. The recovery is pumping more tax dollars into state coffers than anyone expected. So unless the mammoth federal deficits kill the recovery, a great many state governments will be in fiscal clover. The overall state-local surplus, combining pension and general funds, is now estimated to run over $60 billion annually for the next couple of years. How can states best respond to their fiscal comeback? Well, part of the rising revenues will have to be used for catch-up spending on a crumbling infrastructure, on postponed pay increases, and on beefing up education. Second, there's a lot of pressure to build up rainy day funds to help states through lean years. Some 20 already have them, and given their fiscal trauma in the past 3 years and their fears that recovery may not last, many states will set up or strengthen such contingency funds. Third, how about tax cuts? Well, some are already built in. But election year politics and the legacy of the tax revolt, not to mention interstate competition, will intensify pressures for tax cuts. But states would be well advised not to go overboard. Fiscal clover could wilt mighty fast in the winter of a future recession. One has to hope that voters will reward governors and legislators not just for tax cuts, but for wisdom in nourishing starved programs and for prudence in building rainy day funds. I'm Walter Heller.
And now with tonight's last word, here's Paul.
Because of rapid changes in telecommunications, many older firms in that field have dropped the word radio from their names. For example, the former Radio Corporation of America is now simply known as RCA. In line with that trend, Zenith Radio Corporation recently made plans to change its name to Zenith Corporation. But then someone pointed out that in the Chicago phone book, several other firms were using the Zenith name. So, to avoid any confusion, Zenith Radio is changing its name instead to Zenith Electronics. Why is Zenith such a popular corporate moniker? We don't know for sure, but perhaps it's because no firm wants to be the nadir of its industry. Ralph? Linda?
That's right. That's it for this edition of the Nightly Business Report for Wednesday, February 22nd.
And for Linda, for Paul, for all of us on the Nightly Business Report, good night.
The Nightly Business Report is brought to you by Pacific Telesis Group, including Pacific Bell and the Pactel Companies, leading the way in the information age. Digital Equipment Corporation, the world's second largest computer company, providing computer solutions for professionals from professionals. And public television stations throughout the nation.
Local broadcast of the Nightly Business Report is brought to you by Maine Herdman, a national firm of certified public accountants serving the needs of the business community with quality services for over 80 years.
See how great TV can be with Mario Lanza, the American Caruso. Relive the life and career of this extraordinary figure with host Placido Domingo.
There are two generations of music lovers for whom the name Mario Lanza is magic. The young man who was called the American Caruso.
From childhood, Lanza dreamed of being an opera star. Instead, he became a movie sensation. His films made opera popular for a whole new generation. Yet off-screen, his life was often in turmoil, marked by wild swings of exhilaration and frustration. At 38, this great tenor was dead. Relive a legend. Mario Lanza, the American Caruso.
Watch during WLIW's Festival of Stars, Saturday, February 25th at 9.
Take advantage of the fantastic opportunities available for your business in WLIW's fast-paced 1984 Action Auction. Just call this number to donate and see what fabulous benefits can be yours. Great community image, great business boost, great tax deduction, great TV exposure. So join the excitement with Long Island's own Action Auction. It's coming soon right here on Channel 21. This is WLIW-TV, Garden City, New York.